Well, good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, and this is the big day, isn't it? As I told you yesterday, I'm recording this 2 weeks in advance. So, actually, as of this moment, no one knows what's going to happen today, do we? But what I wanted to address today on voting day, and again, if you haven't voted, please do. I mean, we need to as Christians. But I get the sense when I talk with folks, and I mean folks on both sides, there's a lot of worry happening. Wow, if the person or the party that I want and I believe to be the far and away the best choice, if they don't win, this country's had it. It's so interesting that both sides firmly believe that. And I honestly haven't seen that since 1964. Do you remember that election? That was a big one. Barry Goldwater, the conservative side, Lyndon B. Johnson, the liberal side, and there weren't many people in between on that one either. That was so important to me that I was a senior in high school and my mom let me stay out of school that day just so I could work. Actually, it happened to be for Goldwater, and get people to the polls and be on the phones and everything we could do. And I only mention that story to you because if you remember how it came out, in those days, you could declare a winner early on. It didn't matter whether the polls were still open or not. But so about 4 o'clock when we were just getting rolling. I think the polls were staying open until 7. We were just getting rolling, and all the major networks had declared Lyndon Johnson the winner. He was already the winner. Why keep working? And of course, that's after that election, they changed the laws and practices to not declaring winners until all polls were closed. But I remember thinking, this country can't go on. It's not going to work. And yet it did. And I just feel it's kind of the same way now. This country has so many strengths, and it's going to go on. And God is in control. And that's what I want us to get today. I want to bring comfort to your life. I don't want you to worry about this. By the way, I think I'm preaching to myself also, so I'm with you. I don't want to worry. I don't. In Daniel, book of Daniel, this same kind of thing is addressed. In fact, the word sovereign, the sovereignty of God, really is only used a couple of times in the Bible, and 2 of those are in the book of Daniel, chapter 4. I want to read those. Now, the situation is that King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, and that dream was kind of wild, and he couldn't interpret it. So he calls on his magicians and so on, but it's Daniel, God's man in the time. Daniel is who interpreted it. So in Daniel 4, actually, let me just read at verse 25. At the end of that verse, he says this: the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of men and gives them to anyone he wishes. Now that same verse is repeated later in the chapter, and I want to read all that because it's pretty wild. And you'll hear in this part Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And actually, verse 31. This is Daniel speaking, and he's speaking for the Lord. He's interpreting it, and he says, "This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you. You will be driven away from the people and will live with wild animals. You will eat grass like cattle. 7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of men." And he repeats that verse, and gives them to anyone he wishes. I think that's a word for today, don't you? Yes, we're supposed to vote. Yes, we're supposed to pray. and we prayed together yesterday. But there's no escaping the fact that God is in control, and he says he is sovereign over the kingdoms of men and gives them to anyone he wishes. Now the crazy thing is, in this election of today, God knows who's going to win. And he's going to make sure that person does. And we may be excited over that. We may be very disappointed. But God has a reason. And his ways are so much higher than ours, according to Isaiah. Our mind can't even think of what he might have in store for us and for the country that fulfills his will. That fulfills his will. So you and I do not need to worry about it. In fact, if that weren't enough, verse 33, I have to read. Because if you had any doubt, weren't there some crazy things that Nebuchadnezzar was going to live with the cattle, eat grass and all that? And then verse 33 it says, immediately what had been said about Nebuchadnezzar was what? Was fulfilled. Was fulfilled. If that came true, so that God's will could be done, this is easy. This is easy. God working through his people. If we all vote, the Christians of this country are enough in number that we would control any election. So he can work through us. But it says, Nebuchadnezzar was filled. He was driven away from the people, and he ate grass like the cattle, and his body was drenched with dew, and so forth. But at the end, this got to be our response tonight and tomorrow as we get the election results. I pray that it is. So let's put it in our mind that this is how we're to react. At the end of that, verse 34, at the end of that time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes toward heaven, and my sanity was restored. And then I praised the Most High, and I honored and glorified him who lives forever. Do you see what happened? Nebuchadnezzar had to go through some very, very difficult times. His sanity was even put in question. But in the end, he saw it for what it was, that God was working in his life to call him to the Lord. And that's how it went. Whatever these election results, I think we're supposed to act like Nebuchadnezzar did. Then I praised the Most High, and I honored him who lives forever. Who lives forever? Well, Jesus and God. God is Jesus, of course. And through him, we're going to live forever. Well, just like this, there are God's words for us for each day of this week that pertain to the election. So tomorrow, when we get together, we may well know who won. And that certainly, we now know how we're to respond to that. We don't need to worry today, and we don't need to worry tomorrow. God is in control, and God's choice is who is going to win. That's how I know who's going to win. I'm very curious to find out, though, tonight, and I will be watching, just like you, to see who wins. But God is sovereign, and he is in control. I can't wait to talk to you tomorrow. There's some important things for us to do tomorrow also, as there is today. God bless. Have a great night. Kind of an exciting night. See you tomorrow.